Hi, I'm Tony Robbins, and I want to welcome you to this first issue of Power Talk, Strategies for Lifelong Success. I'm really delighted to finally be able to have this conversation with you because I've been wanting to do a program like this for some time. For most of my life, I've always tried to analyze what makes the difference in the quality of life for myself and the people around me. And as I look back over the last 13 years of my life, to times when I was first getting started, when I was frustrated, when I felt alone, when I was overweight, when I was struggling with my finances and my relationships, I look at my life then and I look at it today, and there's a pretty big difference, as you can guess. I ask myself continuously, what is that difference? Out of all the things that I've learned, if I was going to take it all and put it down to a sentence or two, what are the one or two things that have shaped my entire life, changed my destiny, if you will? And I believe the two things are very simple. Number one, I have distinctions today that I didn't have 10, 12, 13 years ago. I have ideas, concepts, strategies, things that help me every day to make better decisions about what to do to make my life work, what actions to take, where to go, who to speak to, what to try to produce the results that I've always wanted in my life. And secondly, throughout these 10, 12, or 13 years of my life, I have consistently gotten myself to take action on those ideas. I didn't just get an idea, I applied it. This tape program is designed to do these two things for you, to be a source for you of distinctions, valuable ideas and elements that you can use immediately to increase the quality of your life. And quite honestly, I'm doing this program for two reasons. One is I'd like to do it for you. I'd like to share these ideas with you because they're always running through my head. I'm making new ideas, new distinctions all the time that enhance my life, and I want to share them, so this provides a vehicle for me. But also, quite honestly, because I want to stay on top of these ideas for myself. And I learned long ago, the best way to make sure you apply something is to teach it. We all teach what we most need to learn. So by me having this conversation with you, I've got an opportunity for me to apply it as well. So we're going to grow together. And what this program really is a coaching program. I found long ago that it's pretty hard to succeed all by yourself. You certainly can, but it's tough. Every great athlete I know, for example, has a coach. And what I want to attempt to do in my own humble way here is provide for you distinctions that'll be a good coach for you. You know, coach doesn't always tell you something brand new. Sometimes they tell you something you already know, but they say it a little bit differently, or they say it at the right time, and bam, you go, you know what? I know that. I can take action. I can make this thing work. So this power talk that we're going to have is going to be designed to push you over the edge, to use more of your talent, ability, and skill, and to provide you with some things that maybe you haven't thought of that can help you to make that 10% difference that literally changes the entire quality of your life. Distinctions provide that difference. What do I mean by distinctions? Let's explore that just for a second. I mean that the quality of your life comes down to the quality of the decisions that you make moment to moment in your life. Think about it. Haven't there been decisions that you've made that have colored your life for both the positive and for the negative? You made the best decision you could at the time based upon the references you had, based upon the distinctions you had about that particular situation. What do I mean? Well, a young baby may not have distinctions about what's going to happen when they walk off, or rather crawl off, that countertop. But I'll tell you one thing, after they do it a few times, they'll remember, won't they? And they'll use that pain, those distinctions, to make better decisions in the future. Well, like the baby, many of us have learned by pain. That is, we've tried things, we've made a poor judgment, and that poor judgment has given us a distinction about what doesn't work. And as a result, we've looked for how to make things work more effectively in our lives. Well, I believe there's two ways to learn life. One is by your own experience. The problem with that is it's painful. You get a lot of distinctions, but you get beat up along the way, and I'm sure many of you can relate to it. I know I can. The better way to learn, I think, is by other people's experiences. I call it OPE. You may have heard of OPM, other people's money, as a way of becoming financially independent. I think OPE is even more valuable. Other people's experiences. We can learn from other people's experiences, utilize that knowledge to make better decisions and get results in our life much more quickly, much more easily, maybe almost effortlessly, with just an idea or two. So these tapes will constantly be providing for you a new idea, a new concept, a new distinction on how to make those better decisions. And you know what? You never know when you're going to get one of these distinctions. This will not be your only source. This is just going to be a source of the right stuff. Something you can count on to support you with ideas, and hopefully to push you and cajole you and trigger you, and I'm going to lean on you and harass you and have some fun with you to get you to use what you already know. Because you know enough right now to have everything in your life work. But we all need that additional support, and that's what this program can do for you if you're willing to just listen to it. But also listen outside this program. That's what I'm going to do. I notice when I go to a movie or when I read a book, I never know when something's going to trigger me to change my whole life. Sometimes it's a painful experience, sometimes it's pleasurable. And so together we're going to explore the world of possibility. Because if there's anything I've found that's valuable in life, It's making a commitment to do something consistently instead of just once in a while. And I hope that's one of the things you're going to decide to do after listening to this tape. That you won't just take these programs and put them on the shelf and have them look good. Yes, they will look good, I promise you. But beyond that, you got to use these darn things. And if you'll say, listen, I'm just going to take a few minutes in my car or at my home or my study or whatever and listen to these tapes and take a few notes and apply one of the exercises. Yes, we're going to make you work in this program. I should warn you in advance. I'm big on not just listening passively. I'm big on challenging you to do something. And in each of these tape programs, I'm going to ask you to do something so you apply it. You'll start seeing measurable results in a variety of the areas of your life. So it just takes making a small commitment, making a decision that says, I am going to consistently feed my mind with these ideas and concepts and see what I can extract from them to create long-term value, lasting value. So I've divided this program into the things that I would like to have. I'm always reading books. Books are a great source of distinctions. And what I found is there are a lot of great books from the past, but every month new great books are coming up with ideas and strategies I'd like to use. And keeping up with them is sometimes difficult. So we have a summary rather than just a review. And this month will be Charles Gibbons' Wealth Without Risk. This is a book I've personally gotten tremendous value from, and one I hope you'll go get as well. In the summary, you'll get some of the key distinctions you can apply immediately, and of course more details are available in his book. Be sure to pick it up. And then secondly, we'll have our own personal conversation, again designed to coach you, tease you, harass you, and give you ideas so that you really apply these things to your life. And thirdly, there'll be an interview with someone of influence, someone who's produced measurable results in their life, emotionally, or socially, or in their relationships, or in economics, someone in the business arena some months in the personal development arena. And some of these people, quite honestly, are good friends of mine. And what I want to do is kind of get you in on some of the conversations that I have the good fortune of having with them. Much of my success in life, all the things that I value, are things that have come out of learning from others. No man's an island, and I'm constantly trying to learn from my friends and associates. And I'm also going to interview some people that I quite honestly want to sit down and find out the answers from myself. So this is a good excuse. You're my reason. We're going to go talk to them and get in on how they think and what are their secrets. What are the ways they approach their life and their business that produce consistent results? So we're going to start with my good friend Ken Blanchard. I met him several years ago when he came to one of my Firewalk seminars. He's the author of The 1 Minute Manager. I'm sure you have the book. If you don't have it, please go get it. It should be the diary of basic fundamentals for managing yourself or anybody else in your life. I have to tell you, over 5 or 6 years of being around Ken and watching what he's done with people, with his relationships, with his family, he is truly successful. Because this man has consistently been a giver throughout his life. He's a person that is always making distinctions, but what motivates him as a human being is his desire to try and put something back for all the good that he's received in his life. And I'm really privileged to be able to share this conversation with you. And what we're going to talk about is his newest book. It's called The 1 Minute Manager Meets the Monkey. Sounds like kind of a bizarre title, but I think you'll find, as Ken will note, that this is probably the most important book that he's written since the original 1 Minute Manager. It'll show you how to make sure that you don't adopt and take on everybody else's problems around you, and really how to take control of your own time and therefore your life. So let's get right to it. Let's start visiting with Ken. Ken, this whole Power Talk program is really designed to give people strategies for lifelong success. And that's basically what you've been doing for the last 15 years or more, is teaching people fundamentals they can use right away. You've probably done it better than almost anyone I know. And it's really a privilege to have you here.
It's great to be with you, Tony.
I'm really excited to share with you people a little bit about your background. What's made you successful as a person? You're probably one of the most successful, if not the most successful business authors in the country. I'd like to talk a little bit about The 1 Minute Manager Meets the Monkey, your newest book, probably my favorite out of the group, which is hard to say since I've enjoyed them all so much. But I think what I'd like to start with, most of all, is just to get an idea from you. A lot of people, when they hear The 1 Minute Manager, they think, well, business, or they think, well, I'm not a manager as a businessman, or that's not part of my career. But I really believe that everyone is a manager. We're managing our time, we're managing our emotions, we're managing our family. And so I'd be curious, what's your definition of a manager, and who is a manager?
Well, Tony, I think once you decide to be a manager, it really means that you are going to work and help other people. I think the difference between a manager and anybody else is individual contributors have a job that they might do or a responsibility, but they don't have anybody else that they necessarily have to worry about. And so as a parent, you're managing kids if you have kids, and as a manager you have people, and it's a whole different thing. A lot of times we make a mistake in organizations and we take good doers and make them managers and assume that they're going to be a good manager. That's not necessarily true.
The Peter principle.
That's right. And so managing is saying, I'm going to spend my time trying to help other people win. As an individual contributor, you're responsible for your own winning.
What makes a really great manager from your standpoint?
Well, I think the real key, at least in the 1990s, I just took a trip with my two kids and my wife Margie. We went to 18 countries over 3 months last fall, and it's so clear as you see what's happening in the Eastern Bloc and as you see what's happening all over the world, that human dignity is more important than ever. People have come almost with a giant spirit pulling us together now to say, I want to be treated as if I'm important, as if I can think, as if I can make decisions. And my feeling about management now is that your job is to empower your people so that they can make decisions that will be in their best interest and the best interest of the organization. And I, for a long time, have said the most important part of being a manager is not what happens when you're there, it's what happens when you're not there. And so the whole process of empowerment is how do you gradually help people to the point where they think that they psychologically own the company, they psychologically own the organization, and they're going to make decisions that are just as good as if you made them. And I think people want that kind of responsibility. I think we have to be careful that we manage the journey to get there. Don't just assume that people are there and then just turn it over. I think that's a major problem around the world. How do we throw off autocratic leadership and then move to a democratic without some transition? I think we need to look at that in our foreign policy, in our organizations. How do you bring people along so that they can eventually really feel their own power?
I think it's really important for people to realize then that, as you said, even if if you have somebody who's a friend, you're a manager in essence. You're managing the relationship, you're supporting the person, you're taking an interest in them. And how to make that transition you're talking about, from having somebody controlling us to controlling our own destiny requires managing ourselves. The transition, though, isn't that really what you taught in leadership styles? Isn't that, in essence, what you were teaching there?
That really is, Tony. It's a whole movement from a directing leadership style where you're telling people what to do, how to do it, where to do it, and closely supervising them. And you gradually move from directing to coaching where you're still directing, but there's two-way communication, to supporting where you're basically involving them in decision-making, to delegating where you let them run with the ball. And I kind of think of the movement from directing, coaching, to supporting, to delegating. It's like a railroad track. And that if you want to get to the point where people are really empowered and you can delegate to them, you got to stay on the railroad track. The biggest problem with parents and managers is that we tell people what to do, we give them our best advice, and then we disappear only to return when they've screwed up enough that it's noticeable. So we go from directing to delegating,
right.
And there's no railroad track there. And anytime you get off the track, then people get hurt. And you end up with what we call leave alone zap or seagull management. Seagull managers kind of fly in, make a lot of noise, dump on everybody, and then fly out. So it's a real process. And the 1 Minute Manager itself really showed the key steps in that process, because when you're going to teach somebody and try to move them along, I have always found that there's 5 steps to teaching people. First, you tell them what to do. Then you show them what to do. You kind of model it. Then you let them try. And then fourth, you observe performance. That's the one that often people miss, the observe performance.
Right.
And the reason you observe performance, so you can do the 5th step, which is either praise progress or redirect. And it sometimes is praise, progress, and redirect. It's very important that you underline the word progress, because what you're trying to do as you manage the journey is to catch people doing things approximately right rather than exactly right. Exactly right comes when you can feel you delegate and they're really empowered. And so it's a really constant process. And if when you observe there's no progress, then you can stop and go back to tell and show. And tell and show is really the first secret of the 1 Minute Manager, 1 minute goal setting. If you want somebody to do something, you've got to be clear on what you want them to do and what good behavior looks like, which is tell and show. And then the praising progress has to do with the second secret of the 1 Minute Manager, which is 1 minute praising, which is after people declare what you want them to do, you want to see if you can catch them doing anything right so you can pat them on the back.
Right.
And then the third secret of the 1 Minute Manager that Spencer Johnson and I did was the 1 minute reprimand, which is something that's saved only for good performers. With a learner, you don't reprimand them. If you can't praise progress, you redirect so
Right.
you can get them back on. If you punish a learner, you will immobilize them. But a reprimand is appropriate sometimes with somebody who it's a won't do problem, not a can't do,
Right.
where it's an attitude problem. But it's very important with a reprimand that you tell them as soon as possible what they did wrong, and specifically what they did wrong, and then how you feel about it. I'm angry, I'm upset, I'm disappointed, I'm frustrated, whatever you are. But then you have to end with a reaffirmation, which says to the person, you know, the reason I'm angry, the reason I'm upset is that you're better than this. This is so unlike you. And it's very important to separate out people from their behavior. People are beautiful. It's just their behavior is the problem sometimes. And what often happens when we get angry or disappointed or upset with people, we go for their jugular and we attack them as
Right.
a human being. You idiot, how could you do this? And what happens is you lose your whole effectiveness with them, because now their energy goes to looking at your leadership style and are analyzing you rather than owning the fact that they maybe did something that wasn't appropriate. Where if you leave the person intact but zero in on the behavior, they can then own that because their okayness is not up for grabs. It's just that behavior that they need to work on.
They don't have to defend so much. If you
That's
attack the
right.
person, then now the self-esteem is on the line.
Mm-hmm.
Versus if you attack the problem or a behavior, they can disassociate themselves from that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, how would you relate this, and how have you related this to managing your relationship with your own kids?
Well, you know, one of the neat things about the 1 Minute Manager is it was so easy to read, and so Scott and Debbie got a chance because the book came out in '82, and that's 8 years ago. And
So here's what you did to us, huh, Dad?
and well, they laughed and got a kick, and we used that. But we were always trying to use those things. I think where I always fell down on probably was the reprimand. You know, I'm a positive person. I always try to catch them doing something right. But Marge and I used to have a strategy because we were both not willing to discipline them necessarily when, as we would say, it's your turn. You know, it's my turn. And
Pass the buck.
it's fun now that the kids are 22 and 24 too to really get to know them as human beings and as friends, and to see maybe some of the stuff worked.
That's great.
And but I know we were constantly working on trying to catch them doing something right and support them on their journeys.
What do you think you got the optimism that really guides your life? You know, you have this incredible warmth that you have for people. You know, I call you a teddy bear, and I think most people feel about that way. You have so much love for people. And where do you think that comes from in your own background?
Well, I think it has to come from my mom and dad. My mom, who's 86 now, is one of the great people that I've ever met in my life, and she said that I laughed before I cried, I sang before I spoke, I danced before I walked, and she said, I can't take any credit, you kind of came out that way. But she's such a positive person. All of her friends are in the 40s and 50s because they love to go places with her because she's such an exciting person. And my dad was a career Navy man and was kind of a Mr. Roberts character, and had one of the greatest sense of humors and was a really neat person. He died in 1979, and I really miss him. He was a wonderful example to me. So the two of them, I think, played a major role, and maybe something happened in the genes or something. But I've always thought life was really just a gas, and really can't believe that I got a chance to do it.
Oh, great. What do you think makes you as successful as you are as a writer and as a speaker? You've managed to become a master in both areas.
Well, it's really interesting about writing. I never thought I would be a writer. All the feedback I ever got when I was in school all the way through college was that my writing wasn't academic enough, which is, I learned later you could understand it, and that I've never had a huge vocabulary and always love to learn from people who make complicated things simple. And so after so many years in school, you know, going through 9 or 10 years, to get a doctor's degree. I saw a lot of bad teachers, and I always decided I was going to have a lot of fun if I ever got a chance to teach. But when my first job, I went as a college administrator because I never thought I could talk because of the writing, and I just, by happen chance, my first teaching job came when the dean, Harry Everett, at Ohio University, when I went to be his assistant dean, said, I want all my deans to teach at least one course, and I had never thought about it. And I went into the class and just fell in love with it and the students, and we just had a marvelous time. And so within 2 years, Harry knew that I was a better teacher than an administrator. So I think that my success as a writer and as a speaker is that I really try to see if I can get the BS out of the behavioral sciences and make things simple to understand, because that's the only way I can understand them.
And you make it fun also.
Yeah, and I got that, I think, from my dad and mom, about the sense of humor and that life is serious but not that serious. And that if you can laugh as much as you cry, you can make it through life.
What a great strategy. That one has some take-home value, I think, for anybody for a lifetime. Simple and powerful. You shared with me one time about when you were teaching about how you gave tests, and you had a rather unique approach to them that's consistent with the One-Minute Manager. I wish you'd share that with us.
Well, my whole philosophy, and I used to get in trouble with other faculty, was that you want the students to win. So I gave the final exam out the first day of class, and the rest of the faculty would say, what are you doing? And I'd say, I'm confused, and they'd say, you act it. And I said, I thought, I was supposed to teach these kids. You are, but don't give them the questions in the final. And I would say, not only am I going to give them the questions in the final, but what do you think I'm going to do all semester? I'm going to teach them the answers.
What a concept.
The interesting thing about that, Tony, is that you can give a lot harder exams that way, see? Because a lot of people say, well, that's soft management. It isn't, because I used to challenge professors, if you didn't like what I was doing, I'm willing to test my students against any students in my field in terms of their knowledge, and they would always back off because I taught the students what they should know and then taught them all the answers. And so what it really is, it's that whole thing around empowerment, because my feeling is that the normal distribution mentality towards the world says that as a manager, my job is to judge, criticize, and rank order and all that, rather than to cheerlead, support, encourage, and that kind of thing. So that it's not about games, it's about upfront. And giving the exam right away is about as clear a goals as you can give. This is what I want you to learn, and we're going to do this. And it wasn't true, false, multiple choice. There was some really hard stuff, but then everybody knew that you were on their side, and then they really can get excited about it. So that's what I think the managers of the 90s really have to get, is that after the goals are set and you play a major role there, then your job is really to be the servant leader, which is, what can I do to help you accomplish those goals? And it's my job to help you win, not my job to sit back and evaluate you. I evaluate you, sure, on a day-to-day basis, only so that I can coach you
and support
to get better.
Well, the phrase, if you wish to become great, learn to become the servant of many, comes to mind, certainly as a foundation.
Well, I've always been struck, Jesus as a religious leader, when you think it, he, really hired 12 deadbeats. The only guy who had any education was Judah, and he built quite a management team. And so much of what I teach is in the Bible, because people said to him, how do I become first? He said, by being last.
Yeah.
How do I lead? By follow. And that whole philosophy of serving others and helping them become the very best. And I think that's the whole philosophy.
What would be your definition of empowerment?
I think empowerment is when you can help people get the skills and confidence that they can handle almost any problem, any situation that comes their way in a particular job or activity. And that they really feel that they have the power rather than you.
Right.
And that really gets to be powerful, because then you're freed up to do all kinds of other things rather than looking over people's shoulders. And when people identify with the organization and feel that you have given them the skills and the confidence to make decisions, they're going to make better decisions than you could from a distance, and they're also going to own it. And then you're going to have people really hooked because they really feel part of it.
Yeah, they'll have the self-esteem and the growth that comes with it. What I find is that many times people give them the skills, but they don't give them the confidence. They don't give them really the ability to make those decisions, whether it be their children or whether it be in their business. And I think you're right. There has to be a combination of the two. Or also, sometimes people give people confidence but no skills, and then you've got a real challenge on your hand. You've got somebody who's all excited and positive and hyped up, but they don't exactly know what to do. So you've got some challenges. How did the 1 Minute Manager first come to be? What was the story behind that?
Well, Tony, I think life in many ways is what happens to you when you're planning on doing something else. And I was out here on a sabbatical leave in 1976 and was planning to go back to Massachusetts, and we ran into a group called the Young Presidents Organization, YPO, and they kind of adopted us and said to Marge and I, you ought to start your own organization. And we didn't know anything about building a business, and they helped us and just created possibility thinking. That's one of the things I love in California. Somewhat back east, people ask why. Out here, they really do ask why not.
Right.
And so when we started our own company and our own business, we just started feeling, what couldn't we do? I mean, we really had great potential. And Marge and I were invited to a cocktail party for authors by Adelaide Bree, who was a wonderful author herself. And Spencer Johnson happened to be there, and Spencer was an MD who had got interested in writing children's books and wrote some marvelous books called Value Tales that even outsold Dr. Seuss for a while. And Spencer was working on a book called The 1 Minute Parent, or The 1 Minute Scolding, on working with kids, and Marge kind of hand-carried him over to me and said, you all ought to talk. What we maybe need is a children's book for managers. And Spencer and I started talking, and he had been working with Jerry Nelson on a book on scolding, disciplining, but he had already expanded his own mind to parenting and all, and I was talked to him about the importance of goal setting and praising, and
Right.
Spencer had already been thinking about some of that, and I invited him to a seminar I was giving at the Rancho Bernardo Inn in San Diego on Monday, and Spencer and Adelaide came up and sat in the back, and Spencer laughed and enjoyed and all. And at the end of the day, he came up and said, "To hell with parenting, let's go for managers." And
Which parents are.
that's right. And so the synergy was absolutely incredible. In fact, in many ways, the 1 Minute Manager wrote us. I think it really needed to be out. And from meeting in early November, we had our own self-published version out by the 1st of May, which we presented at the National Restaurant Association in Chicago, and sold 15 or 20,000 copies on our own with really no advertising.
Wow.
And tremendous energy. And then Spencer and Margaret McBride, who's been our literary agent and friend, went to New York and talked to publishers who all were going crazy.
Right.
But they all said, you can't sell a small book for $15 because the 1 Minute Manager is very small. In fact, Spencer had spent some time looking at nonfiction books and found out that less than 10% of all the nonfiction books bought in America are ever read past the first chapter. And in fact, you buy them and you put them in your shelves and
They look good.
and all. Yeah, and so we decided to make our book only one chapter long. So it just William Morrow took the challenge of how do you sell a little book, and it was just one of those energy things that the timing was right, and within probably 3 weeks it was on the bestseller list and just hung in there for 3 years.
That's amazing.
So it was a wonderful experience, and still amazing how many it still sells and how many letters I still get from people about that book, even though it is some 8 years or more.
It's sold over 7 million copies now or something like
I
that?
guess so, in terms of paperback and
Yeah.
foreign and
Amazing. Around the world. One of the questions that comes up for people is, why the high price on such a small book? What was the philosophy behind it?
The philosophy behind that was, is if it was a $5.95 book, they would think it was in the $5.95 idea, and that we put a seal on the front that said small, expensive, but invaluable. And so it was a whole strategy to say, yeah, it was small, but there's some gems that can really make a difference in your life, and step up to it and go for it. And I think it changed the whole nonfiction book publishing in this country when people started pricing things on value rather than necessarily size, which had been the only way it was done before.
That's interesting. And when you talk about value versus cost, what do you consider the value of distinctions, strategies, and so forth? How important are they to success?
Well, I think that what people need is just a couple of good ideas to take them to the next plateau. And I think that if you're a positive thinker and you have a vision of where you want to go, ideas and people will come towards you. And rather than looking for some complicated thing to make a difference, everything I've ever seen is a few simple ideas can make that breakthrough to go to the next level that can open you up for the next few thoughts that can move you. And so I think that what we were trying to do is to say what was the essence of management, and if you could set real clear goals, and if you could catch people doing things right and praise them, and if you could reprimand people when they got off of track in a way that didn't make them feel lousy about themselves but made them change their behavior, there's not too many other things that from the people standpoint you need. So what you're trying to do is increase people's behavioral batting average by giving her a concept. I think the old economist Pareto in Italy had something. He talked about the 80-20 rule. 80% of sales comes from 20% of your salespeople, and 80% of this. And I'm not sure that it's those good 20% ideas that make most of the gains for you, not the big complicated things that are all encompassing.
The whole purpose of Power Talk is to give people a series of those strategies so they can count on them, some gems that will trigger them. What would you say are 2 or 3 of the most important distinctions or strategies that have really shaped your life, say, in the last 2 or 3 years?
Well, I think probably the most important one is the whole concept of commitment. And I first got that from Werner Erhard and Est. And Art Turax, who's a friend who wrote a book called Getting Physical, took that and built on it and said that there's a difference between commitment and interest. And that is a really important distinction for me, is that interested people, whether you're interested in losing weight, whether you're interested in making money, or whatever you're interested in, is if you're just interested in it, you will always have an excuse why you can't do it. Where committed people don't know about excuses, they just know about results. And I remember asking Werner one time, what's his definition of commitment? He said that commitment is when you live as if your word is you. And you said you were going to do it, and now you're going to really go for it. And where an interested exerciser wakes up in the morning and it's raining, and they say, gee, it's raining out, I think I'll exercise tomorrow. Where a committed exerciser wakes up and says, it's raining out, I think I'll get my rain gear. And so what it's also helped me is to realize that you don't want to be committed to everything. It's okay to be interested in something.
Pretty important distinction.
Yeah, but don't put yourself down if you don't become a super high achiever in those interested areas. In fact, I don't think, and it gets back to goal setting, that you can concentrate on any more than 2 or 3 really significant things, say, in a year or a period of time. And so a lot of times people want to do everything at once, and you just can't. All the peak performers I know focus and have a few things that they're really going to go at no matter what.
Right. That absolute commitment. I call that concentration of power. That if you concentrate all your power on anything every single day, and you've got to demand more from yourself every day to become more, you're going to get great in that area. But the challenge is that most people, from my perception, never concentrate their power. They've got 8 million things they're trying to do simultaneously, or they major in minor things. They do things that really don't matter, and they focus on those on a regular basis. So talking about commitment, I've certainly found in my own relationship that's probably the essence of a quality relationship. How's that affected your marriage? You've been married now how many years?
28 years now.
Wow. Incredible
And,
lady who loves you, and you obviously love tremendously. How has that played a role there?
Well, I think that a lot of times people look at the marriage vows as to death do us part, if it's convenient. And that, a lot of people ask me, whether I do marriage counseling, and I say, I don't know marriage counseling, but I'll ask you one question. Do you want your relationship to work? And there's only two answers, yes or no. And not, well, we're trying. Trying, as you know, is this a noisier way of not doing something. In fact, I have a lot of friends that periodically go into marriage counseling, and I'll always say, why are you doing it? If they say, well, we're trying to get our relationship, I say, save your money. You're either going to go to make it work or go to get a friendly separation. So I think that Marge and I, as we grew together, came to a point, and I think it probably was the transition from moving from Massachusetts to California. She had just finished her doctorate and, was really solid in her background and education. And we came to the point where we really didn't need each other. Because she had her own power and her own degree and her own field that she could have gone. And then we said, well, do we want to be together? Yeah. And I think that's really powerful because then you say yes. And that's what commitment is all about. When you say, yes, I want to make it work, now what you do is you accent the positive and you try to catch that person doing something right. What happens in a lot of love relationships is, when they say love is blind, they're really saying all you're doing is noticing the positive. And so all love relationships, as well as work relationships, all start off positive. And then all of a sudden you have some permanency and you say, gee, I didn't know about that. Who told me about that? And what's the final demise of a love relationship is when you do something right, you get yelled at because you didn't do it right enough. You should have asked me. You should have done it on Wednesday. And if you want to catch people doing things wrong, you can. That's why the only question to ask is, do you want to make it work or not? So Marge and I are just growing and having a ball together, looking forward to the next 40 or 50 years together. But we came to the point to say, hey, we're going to accent the positive, because who doesn't have behaviors that bug somebody? And it's amazing, though, if you're in a supportive environment and people feel that you're on their side, they'll also work on some of the things that probably bug you.
Yeah.
But if all you accent is the negative and what the problem is, then they can never get past it.
Yeah, and you've taken away their opportunity to try and give to you as well, because now you're demanding them versus allowing them to have the opportunity of giving you the gift. What do you value most in your life? I know you value a lot of things that are really important to you, but what would you say you value most?
Well, Marge and I went through a process as we were thinking of our company, and our company is very much like us. And the number one is relationships. We said that our most important thing is our relationships, whether they be 40-year-old relationships or 1-week relationships. Is that if we say to somebody that we're committed or we want to do something, we want to really take care of that relationship, even if it costs us money or other kinds of things. And that's been one that we have kept on shouting out in our own company, that our relationship with our customers, our relationship with each other, that's the most important value. And I think that as Marge and I move on in our lives, that what we come back to more time and time again is people and the relationships. I love Rabbi Kushner, who wrote When Bad Things Happen to Good People, and I really enjoyed his book When All You Ever Wanted Is Not Enough. And he was on a conference with Marge and I, and he said all of his years as a rabbi, he never heard anybody in their deathbed to say, I wish I went to the office more. They all said, I wish I had loved more, I wish I had reached out more, and so I feel good that we've come to that feeling way before, our last moments, to say, yeah, they're really important. And so I think that's what drives us.
How do you nurture your relationships? You seem to, I know recently when I got a chance to meet quite a few of your friends at your birthday party, you've got friends that you've known for 20, 30 years or more. And the closeness that you guys have, it's not like they just came and showed up because it was a birthday. That
Mm-hmm.
closeness is obviously constant. What gives you the ability, what strategies or talents do you think you have that cause you to be able to nurture relationships so well?
Well, I think to really nurture relationships, whether it be in your own immediate family or external, is that you have to be willing to go and do things together, experience things together. I think just having a meal every once in a while is nice, but where you want to get past that is that going skiing together, camping together, doing something together. And our oldest and dearest friends are ones that we continually meet and do things with, where we're kind of with each other for 24 hours and exposing each other to all of us who we are. And Marge and I just have taken time out over the years. We had a marvelous thing that Marge's mom and dad had set up. They had a little cottage that they started with a tent on and finally built a little cottage in upstate New York in Skaneateles. And so ever since I've known Marge, we just go there for 6 or 7 weeks in the summer, and people just gather there. And that's another place where friends gather, where we all cook the meals together and clean together and fish together and boat together and play together. And that's just been part of our lives. Even when we started a company, we said from the first employee, we're gone 6 or 7 weeks. That's where our roots are. And so I think it takes time, that your relationships are a goal. It's not just something that you kind of fit in on the side. I mean, when I look at my goals, there's a whole category on relationships that I look at every week and see if there's somebody I might be near this week, or is there somebody I could call? Is there something that I can do to reach out to people that are important?
This program is continued on the opposite side.